Now, for more on this, we're being joined by Ben Eris, founder and editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews and former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. Sir, always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Sir, Russia is getting increasingly irked by the involvement of the West in the war with Ukraine, saying that it will start arming other countries to hit targets in the West, and also saying that if Russian allies are attacked, it will lead to a response from Russia as well. What is your assessment of these statements?
This is part of the ongoing creeping escalation that we've been seeing in this war throughout since the beginning. If you remember right back in the beginning that the US supplied Ukraine with Javelin missiles, these anti-tank missiles, very effective they were, but told Ukraine they couldn't use them except in extreme circumstances. And since then, the missiles, the arms that have been sent have been progressively getting more powerful and more numerous, and the restrictions on the use of them in order to prevent provoking Russia into a direct clash with NATO have been slowly fading away. And now we're up to the point where we're very close to the red line, where Russia and NATO go head to head. Putin's just played another card. He said that because of the US and the West's decision recently to authorize Ukraine to use US and NATO-made missiles to strike targets inside Russia, that he's going to respond, but he's not gone the whole way. He's not said that I'm going to hit targets who are supplying weapons to Ukraine, say ammunition dumps in Poland or somewhere like that. What he's threatening to do is destabilize conflicts elsewhere. So Russia's already friends with Iran. Iran's backing the Houthis. I mean, maybe Russia is going to give more and some of its more sophisticated missiles in order to destabilize things in the Red Sea, in the Middle East. And this is something, of course, that the West doesn't want to see. But it's a response to the Western decision to allow Ukraine to use its missiles against Russian targets inside Russia. And again, there are restrictions on that, too. It's been a card played by the US where they said that Ukraine can use the HIMARS missiles, but they can't use the ATCMS, the much more powerful, longer range American missiles to hit things that are much deeper in Russian territory, specifically the oil refineries, which are far away and the HIMARS won't reach.
Right, so just on that, the Russian president also mentioned that the war may end in 2 to 3 months if the United States were to stop aiding Ukraine in its counteroffensive. Now, what does that mean? What sort of an end to the war do you think he's talking about?
No, he's talking about Ukraine's capitulation. I mean, the war in Ukraine is now going very badly. I mean, the front line has not moved more than a few kilometers in most of the last year, but this year, since Ukraine effectively did get stopped supplying weapons from the States, then they're in retreat. They've lost some 700 square kilometers since the beginning of the year, according to the Institute of War. And they're going backwards. And Putin's right. If the US doesn't provide more weapons, and it did the $61 billion military package, but those weapons are only very slowly arriving in Ukraine. If the US cuts off Ukraine completely, then they're facing defeat in the face. They can't keep fighting without weapons, without ammunition, what they don't have at the moment. But I mean, I don't think that's realistic. I mean, the West continues to dribble in sufficient supplies to allow the Ukrainians to hold out, and the Ukrainians own its drones, its homemade drones are lethal, and they've made the line of contact a no man's land, a no-go zone. Anyone that goes into there on either side is going to be killed with the drone. So we kind of have a stalemate with Ukraine in slow retreat in the face of a brutal Russian onslaught.
All right, so now another thing that he mentioned, Putin said that Russia's nuclear doctrine, that's not something that should be taken lightly. What does that point to? What do you think he's implying?
It's Russia's trump card. It's why NATO is being so careful, why it's pulling back and holding back so much of the powerful weapons that Ukraine needs to win. If Ukraine wins, if it ejects Russia from its territory, then and moreover, if they start hitting targets inside Russia, the nuclear doctrine says that if Russia faces quote unquote an existential threat, then it's allowed to use nuclear missiles in a first strike. And by waving this card, he prevents NATO from really sending, the kind of numbers and volumes of arms and ammo that would allow Ukraine to win. And so by playing this card, he's hoping to limit the amount of arms that are being sent, and specifically, and as it's working, to make the US hold off and say, look, you can use the HIMARS, but you can't use the really powerful ATACMS missiles, which actually make a difference in the war. And so it leaves Russia in a position where it can just grind away at Ukraine, and Ukraine can never properly hit back.
Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Ben Erez, thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One. Always a pleasure to have you.
Always a pleasure.
For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.